Developing right now on Morning News Now, promises and pushback. This morning, Mexico, Canada, and China all vowing to retaliate against steep tariffs on imported goods just imposed by President Trump and set to take effect in hours.
We may have short-term some little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world.
We're now in a trade war with Mexico and Canada. For the American people, it'll now be a war between prices and their paychecks.
We have team coverage with more on the tariffs, the fallout, and what it does mean for you. Also, the FBI bracing for a shakeup under the new Trump administration. And new this morning, Elon Musk announcing plans to shut down another major federal agency. Plus, a key piece of evidence recovered in the Philadelphia plane crash that killed 7 people. We'll bring you the latest on the investigation. And history on music's biggest night. Beyoncé's crossover country album finally earning her the top award at this year's Grammys. Plus, another big winner, rapper Kendrick Lamar, turning his Drake diss track into a love song for his hometown of L.A. We'll take you to the red carpet for some of the night's most memorable moments. That is why I am a little tired this morning. Couldn't stop watching.
I tapped out with a good hour and a half. I'm like, I'll read about it in the morning. I'll get it right here
Smart
on
man.
Morning News Now. Good to have you with us on this Monday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks so much for being here. This morning, the United States is on the brink of a trade war with some of its closest economic allies after the Trump administration imposed tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. The measures are expected to come into effect at midnight tonight and could have a major impact on the price of everything from produce to gas. The president announced over the weekend a 25% tariff on most imports from Canada and Mexico and 10% on China. Mr. Trump also said he would definitely slap tariffs on the European Union, though a timeline for that has not yet been set.
Both Canada and Mexico have announced retaliatory tariffs, while China says it will file a lawsuit at the World Trade Organization. The impending trade war is sending shockwaves throughout global financial markets. European and Asian markets tumbled this morning. U.S. markets are expected to follow suit when they open later today. Speaking on Sunday, the president defended his decision to impose these tariffs while warning American consumers that it will be a bumpy road ahead.
We may have short-term some little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country. Not every country, but almost. And we're going to change it. It's been unfair. That's why we owe $36 trillion. We have deficits with everybody. We help everybody. We've been helping everybody for years. And to be honest, I don't think they appreciate it. So we're going to change that.
We've got a team standing by to talk about all this and so much more. Let's start things off with NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, good morning. The president finally following through with his threat of tariffs. Plenty of criticism aimed at this move, and not just from Democrats. So help us understand the president's argument for going through with this and what kind of imports are targeted.
Well, hi there, Joe. Good morning. You mentioned already some of the products that would be impacted, everything from oil to lumber to auto parts. And the president says that he's trying to get some leverage here. The White House pointing out that trade is more than 60% of GDP for both Canada and Mexico, just 25% for the U.S. And so the president believes this is something that needs to be done because, in his words, as you just heard, that those countries are, quote, ripping us off. Now, he's also seeking to tamp down the number of illegal border crossings that come from the U.S. southern and northern border. And he says both countries have not done enough to curb the dangerous drug fentanyl from coming into the U.S. And also, as for China, that a lot of the precursor chemicals come from that country. So the president trying to lay out his case, even though many experts warn that these tariffs will mean more, that the American consumer will have to pay more, Joe and Savannah.
Gabe, we're going to dig into China's response to all this with Janice in Beijing shortly, but talk to us about what we're hearing from Canada and Mexico. How are they reacting, and what plans do we know of retaliation?
Well, already over the weekend, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying that there would be retaliatory tariffs here. Also, another 25% tariffs on American goods. And already over the weekend, we've seen Canadian basketball fans booing the American national anthem at a Toronto Raptors game. Also, we've been seeing that at other sporting events. And then over the weekend, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke out about these impending tariffs. Let's listen.
It will have real consequences for you, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump.
Mexico's president directed her government as well to look at what she called Plan B, tariff measures as well as non-tariff measures to retaliate against them. Joan Savannah.
Gabe, while we have you, we're hearing from Elon Musk that he and the president now planning to shut down the U.S. Agency for International Development, also known as USAID. I mean, this group focuses on foreign aid, international charities. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, Joe, look, the program was started back in 1961 under President John F. Kennedy, and it serves as the U.S.'s humanitarian arm around the world. Well, overnight in online, Elon Musk saying that he would shut it down after speaking with the president, that it was, quote, a ball of worms that was beyond repair. Now, this comes just several days after 5 sources tell NBC News that 2 top security officials at USAID were placed on administrative leave after denying the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, access to sensitive computer systems. So, again, Elon Musk saying overnight that this program, around for decades, would be shut down. Joan Savannah.
All right, a lot to talk about this morning. Gabe, thank you so much.
Let's take a closer look at China's response to these tariffs with NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer. She joins us from Beijing. Janice, good morning. So we'll ask you similar questions here. We do know China has previously said there are no winners in a trade war, but tell us Beijing's reaction to this 10% tariff and any retaliation plans there like Mexico and Canada.
Well, President Trump has made no secret of his intentions around tariffs on Chinese goods. He followed through on it during his first term, and he talked about it a lot on the campaign trail. This time, the 10% tariffs are on all Chinese goods. That includes the list 4B items that weren't included the last time. So things like TVs, laptops, toys, iPhones. Think about the number of things that are made in China that you use or wear every day. Markets across Asia were down today on this news and the uncertainty of what could be a prolonged trade war. China's Commerce Ministry released a statement over the weekend. It's a national holiday here. Officials are vowing unspecified countermeasures. So it's unclear what they might be, but given the dependence on supply chains here and the time that China has had to think and prepare for this, those measures could sting. Joe and Savannah.
So, Janice, China says it's planning to file a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization. Tell us how that might work and what it could achieve.
It probably won't achieve much, and that's for structural reasons at the WTO, because for years there have been too few judges to hear cases. The U.S. has blocked the appointment of judges since President Trump's first term. So on legal avenues at the WTO, there are limitations. But there are strategic considerations that we should talk about, too, that could benefit China. Critics are saying that the chaos that's being created could push other countries, like Europe, to strengthen trade with China as a counter to what's seen as unreliable trade agreements with the U.S. Remember, too, Beijing has also been investing very heavily in the EV industry and clean energy, solar panels, at a time when President Trump has also said that the U.S. is going to back away from those types of investments. So Beijing is saying it still wants a stable relationship with the U.S., but China is saying that these tariffs, are a serious violation of international trade rules. Joe.
Hey, Janice, I also want to ask you about something we just discussed with Gabe, because it's also one of the reasons why the president says he's imposing tariffs on China. He's accusing the country of producing and sending fentanyl or the components used in making it to Mexico and Canada, and then he says that comes into the U.S. What is China saying about that particular accusation?
This move of President Trump to invoke national security to unravel long-standing trade agreements is China takes exception to this and to the accusation that it's been doing too little to stop the flow of fentanyl. The Ministry of Public Security released a statement today saying China was the first country in the world to officially schedule fentanyl-related substances as a class in 2019. The Foreign Ministry also added to that today, fentanyl is an issue for the U.S. In the spirit of humanity and goodwill, China has given support to the U.S.'s response to this issue. The U.S. needs to view and solve its own fentanyl issue in an objective and rational way instead of threatening other countries with arbitrary tariff hikes. That from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Beijing has long said that if the U.S. wants to control the opioid crisis, it has to look at demand and, in China's eyes, not put the blame on other countries. Fentanyl has actually been one of the few areas where China and the U.S. have had talks and progress in recent years. I've talked extensively with the former U.S. ambassador about this. He had said that talks have always been directly linked to bilateral relations, and he warned just last month that if tariffs were tied to fentanyl, then China would simply walk away from talks. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Janice, thank you very much.
Let's talk about your wallet here. Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver is here with more on what this could mean for just your money. So when we look at these three countries, Canada, Mexico, China, last year made up nearly half of all imports into the U.S. Let's start with where are we going to see the impact right now?
Well, everywhere from the grocery store to the car dealership to filling up your car at the pump, because basically everything is going to have a tariff slapped on it. When you think about what we import from these countries, Mexico, it's a lot of fruits, it's a lot of vegetables, obviously. It's also a lot of car parts and some natural gas. When you think about Canada, we're talking about, obviously, timber. We're talking about natural gas and oil. You saw a 10% carve out there for Canadian oil. Very interesting in this tariff thing. That's the one thing that has smaller tariff on it, but also a lot of frozen potatoes, lots of grain, lumber, and steel. And then China, this is an everything tariff. We already have about $360 billion worth of tariffs on Chinese imports from the first Trump administration that the Biden administration added to. So basically everything. You're looking at this costing consumers anywhere from $500 a year to $1,500 a year in extra cost. At this point, we haven't seen too much retaliation news yet. As soon as that starts, these prices could go up.
Caleb, you mentioned tariffs in his first term. The last time that President Trump did this, if we look back there was a study from the Federal Reserve. It found that there was a loss of American manufacturing jobs, which is interesting, and also these higher prices that we've been talking about. When would ripple effects like that start to happen, and explain those ripple effects to us?
When you think about the S&P 500, the 500 biggest companies in America, half of their revenue comes from exports to other countries. So if you get retaliatory measures there, that's going to increase their production costs over there, but it also increases their import costs for all the products they make here in America. And what do? They pass them on to the consumers, and either we end up paying the price with higher inflation, or we tap out, and that slows economic growth. So tariffs have this consequence where you get retaliation. We've already heard Canada talking about taxing agricultural products, alcohol, that's whiskey and bourbon, apparel, footwear, cars, and EVs. That hurts American exports as well, and it hurts jobs. It slows growth, and it messes up the supply chain, because all of a sudden, companies are wondering where they're going to get their materials from. Do they need to resource from other countries? How about their exports? This could be a supply chain nightmare for the first 6 to 12 months of this, depending on how long it lasts.
Let's talk about the stock market reaction. Last week we had a rough day on Wall Street. That was related to tech. This is not going to be that. What do we expect to see today, and where do we expect to see these?
When you look at the futures right now in the stock market, it is concentrated in the Dow Industrials. We're talking about big car companies here, big pharma companies here, obviously, but companies that do a lot of exports to other countries. You're already seeing Dow futures down several hundred points. This could be one of those bad days on Wall Street again, because there's a lot of uncertainty here, and uncertainty is kryptonite for investors. We usually sell first and ask questions later. You're seeing a lot of that right now, but this is just beginning.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this the type of thing where it could be 1 or 2 rough days, or it could just keep going if a trade war keeps going?
Yeah, an escalating trade war could make this even worse over time, but right now investors are just selling in Asia, in Europe, and here in the United States before the market opens. Could be a rough one today.
All right, Caleb, thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's switch gears now. So this morning, the fear of mass firings is swirling to the FBI, with some agents even preemptively packing up their desks.
This unease comes after President Trump publicly praised the firings of 8 top FBI career executives. The Trump administration is quickly trying to reshape the agency shortly after granting those sweeping pardons to the January 6th rioters.
For more, we are joined by NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley. Ryan, good morning. So in a message to staff members over the weekend, acting FBI director, this is Brian Driscoll, he said that he had been told to turn over the names of every FBI employee involved in investigating January 6th rioters. Talk to us about the impact this is having within the Bureau and what we're hearing from the agency. How are they responding?
Yeah, that's a lot of individuals who worked on those cases, because you're talking about, more than 1,500 criminal cases that were brought. That doesn't include all the investigations that were done, which is over 2,000. More than 3,000 people stormed the Capitol altogether. And every step of the way, you have FBI employees who were involved in those processes, whether it be from just like helping effectuate an arrest to whether it be, actually the lead agent on a case or a supervisor or something of that nature. So you're talking about a really large group of people. And remember, as much as we've gotten away from the reality about what the FBI is, it's a conservative-leaning organization. So there were definitely components of the FBI that weren't so enthusiastic about investigating these January 6 cases altogether. And those people are going to be on those lists who weren't so enthusiastic, right alongside the people who were sort of really working on this with all of their might. So you're going to have a really large range of people who are going to be impacted by this. It's really crisis mode, I think, at the FBI right now, with a lot of panic about what this means. Although, the acting head of the FBI is standing strong right now and has a lot of support from a lot of the agents within the Bureau.
Ryan, we know some agents have actually been sent a 12-question survey asking about their roles in January 6 cases. What more can you tell us about this survey?
Yeah, and I can't just stress how unusual this is, right? Because you're literally compiling a list of individuals who worked on the largest investigation in American history involving the storming of the Capitol and violent rioters who bashed in officers' heads, used every kind of weapon they possibly could against these officers, dragged them down the stairs. And you're getting individuals who tried to, vindicate the rights of those victims who were brutalized that day, who are now being added to this list. And, this was something that the FBI said it was going to be able to handle, right? I remember there was this email afterwards, right after January 6th, saying, we do big. And now what you had here is, because it targeted so many Donald Trump supporters who believed his lies about the election, ultimately 4 years later, this is going to be this major crisis pivot moment for the FBI. And it's a big question about whether or not any FBI agents would ever want to touch a case that remotely had anything to do with even Donald Trump supporters at this point. I think the chilling effect that this has on the Bureau really can't be overstated.
Ryan, this is all playing out, of course, while the Senate weighs whether to confirm Trump's pick for FBI director. That's Kash Patel. What is he saying about all this?
Yeah, so, the timing is really fascinating here, because he got in that hearing before this sort of purge started. So if this had happened before, even though these are a lot of people he's affiliated with, he claimed that he didn't, know a lot to do with the leadership that was being put into place. But, he made some of those promises at that hearing about the handling of this. This just really shows, I think, how Kash Patel and how Donald Trump continue to have this obsession with January 6 cases, and really have these deep grievances about how those cases were handled. Although I should say, Kash Patel did say that he thought that the pardons were wrong for anybody who assaulted a law enforcement officer that day. So I guess he's sort of drawing this separate line. But the practical effect that's happening within the Bureau right now is that a lot of agents feel as though they're being targeted for responding to an attack on America, an attack on their country.
Ryan Riley, thank you very much for joining us.
For more now, we are joined by NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good to have you with us. All right, so in conversations with NBC News, you and your colleagues have done a lot of reporting. Nearly 24 federal workers are describing a climate of fear, confusion, skepticism, and anger since President Trump returned to power. Today just marks 2 weeks since Inauguration Day. Talk to us about the impact all this is having just on workers and the ability of crucial government agencies to function right now.
Yeah, I spoke to one longtime federal government manager who said that what's going on amounts to quote-unquote psychological warfare. Basically, the morale of federal workers is extraordinarily low right now. It's difficult to motivate them. As you said, Alan Smith and I, in reporting this story, talked to more than 24 people who work at various federal agencies. And, it goes from, the president unilaterally attempting to cut off funding for programs that they administer to these daily reminders that they are invited to resign their jobs, which people have described as, basically a form of harassment intended to get them to wear down and decide that they don't want their jobs. So really, like across the board here, you see the firings that you were just talking about at the FBI. Similarly, people were put on leave at the U.S. Agency for International Development. Elon Musk said over the weekend that they want to fold AID into the State Department, or basically abolish USAID altogether unilaterally. So we're going to see some, I think, a whole lot of court cases, but some of what's going on will stand. And it is deeply demoralizing at best for thousands, well, really probably millions of federal workers.
John, in your reporting, part of this is in an article that you wrote for NBCNews.com. You specifically wrote that Trump is waging war against his own government and primarily using two little-known agencies. Explain that to us. What are they? How's he using them?
Sure. The Office of Management and Budget is basically the White House's budget office. We saw the first sort of big use and then kind of walk back from the OMB. That was the order to freeze funding for foreign and domestic programs. And then the White House, having touched a hot political stove, pulled that memo from the Office of Management and Budget back. The underlying executive order that put it in place is still there, which has left, according to Senator Chris Van Hollen, Democrat of Maryland, who I spoke to, represents thousands of federal workers, said that basically managers, supervisors are now in a position of having to choose between the president and the law. And so that's the Office of Management and Budget. They're basically the White House budget office, the green eye shade folks. And then the Office of Personnel Management is effectively human resources for the federal government. And Elon Musk and his allies have taken over the Office of Personnel Management. And so they're sending out these messages that tell people to resign every day.
All right. Jonathan Allen, we know you'll stay on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, investigators in Philadelphia say they have found the so-called black box cockpit voice recorder from the medical transport jet that killed 7 people in a fiery crash on Friday night. Information on the device is expected to play a key role in figuring out the cause of the deadly incident. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa has more on the discovery of this critical piece of evidence.
New images of the force of impact from the deadly plane crash in Northeast Philadelphia. Investigators standing in the crater left behind. That's where they found a key piece of evidence, the cockpit voice recorder that looks similar to this. The medevac plane nosedived less than a minute after takeoff before exploding Friday night. Officials now reporting that furious blast injured 22 people.
5 of the victims remain hospitalized currently, and 3 of them are in critical condition.
Andre Howard's 10-year-old son remains in the hospital after he was struck in the head by metal while in their car.
The way it landed, it was only because he's laid on his sister. It landed right on the right side of his head.
He was protecting his sister.
Yes, and he's my superhero.
It's your superhero.
He's my superhero.
Officials say 7 people died, including all 6 Mexican citizens on board the Learjet 55. A family friend remembering Lizeth Maria Osuna as a warrior for her daughter Valentina. The young girl was receiving treatment at Shriners Children's Hospital for 4 months and finally returning home on Jet Rescue Air Ambulance. The company says it flies 600 to 700 flights a year and has had 1 other fatal crash in its 27 years of operating.
Any accident is cause for concern, but in terms of medevac airplane accidents over the past few years, it's been fairly stable. They're very safe. That's why they get a lot of attention when they do occur.
And that cockpit voice recorder was recovered just beyond those police cars in a crater 8 feet deep. The NTSB also found both of the plane's engines and a warning system that they say will provide additional flight data. Back to you.
All right, Emily, thank you.
Time now for a check on your morning news now. Monday forecasts, including the latest on a cold front that's crossing the Great Lakes into the Northeast today.
Meteorologist Denise Isaac got the polka dot memo, and she's with us this morning. Hey, Denise, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. Well, this morning we are tracking snow showers from Bismarck into Minneapolis as well as northern Michigan, and that front will eventually slide towards the northeast. this afternoon and into this evening, bringing accumulations anywhere between 1 to 5 inches of snow and also some much colder air behind that cold front. So here's a snowfall forecast through Tuesday, anywhere between 1 to 5 inches possible, especially across the higher elevations. And even though the northern tier is talking about cold, the deep south has nothing to do with that because we're flirting with record highs. San Angelo, Texas, 85 degrees is the forecasted high today. That will break the previous record of 82, while Dodge City, 75, previous record of 77, and Denver will be tying the previous record of 70 degrees. While out west, we are dealing with an atmospheric river. Plenty rain is expected across California. We have a soaking system here that will impact Northern California this morning into the afternoon. Flooding is possible around Chico, Redding, and also Santa Rosa. Then by tomorrow, that system brings even more rain across Central California. The Bay Area will be at risk for flooding, and over Northern California, we'll be dealing with some snow as well as Washington and Oregon. And then by Wednesday, there is a possibility for some rain across Southern Cal, which will be great news after the wildfires in December and early January, with rainfall amounts up to 1 inch possible. So as we take a look at how much rain we could get from this system from now all the way through Wednesday, some locations 5 to possibly 7 inches of rain. So mudslides a possibility. And when it comes to snow, 18 to 24 inches of snow possible, and some locations locally could pick up 36 inches of snow or even more. Back to you at the studio.
All right, thank you so much.
There's much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, she is a major force in the fashion world. Now Rebecca Minkoff is heading from the runway to the bookstore. She'll join me on set to share her story in our latest edition of Women Mean Business.
Up first after the break, relief in the Middle East. More Israeli hostages released by Hamas ahead of a meeting between Israel's Prime Minister and President Trump. We'll be right back.
We are back now with the latest on the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
Over the weekend, Hamas released 3 more hostages, including an Israeli American, in exchange for 183 prisoners held by Israel. That brings the total number of hostages released so far under this agreement to 18. Looking ahead, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to meet with President Trump tomorrow in Washington.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Vasugian, who joins us from Tel Aviv with the latest. Yasmin, good morning. So we'll get to the latest hostage exchange in just a moment. First, though, I want to ask you about explosions overnight in the West Bank city, that officials say may have damaged a hospital. What are you hearing?
Yeah, so it was in a city called Jenin, which is in the West Bank. It's about 40 miles or so from here, deep into the West Bank. We heard about these explosions midday yesterday, around 3 p.m. or so. They kind of started, the images started streaming in. The explosions, I'm sure if you're showing the video now, I don't necessarily have a monitor to know if you are, in fact, showing them, but they were incredible to see, really stunning, right? Major explosions across the city of Jenin. We're hearing that 20 or so residential buildings were, in fact, damaged. We're talking about, multiple apartments on every floor. The way in which these buildings, guys, are built in Jenin is they're built vertically, right? So we're not talking about one apartment per floor. There's multiple residences per floor. So for individuals that had homes in these buildings, we're talking about major loss to homes and personal belongings as well. When it comes to evacuations, at least 15,000 Palestinian residents in Jenin have so far been evacuated from Jenin camp. When it comes to fatalities, we have not heard of any fatalities from those explosions overnight. However, since the beginning of this ceasefire deal so far, we have 25 confirmed fatalities so far of Palestinians in and around Jenin. Just over the weekend, a young child on Saturday was killed, along with an elderly individual on Sunday morning as well. So while the war and there's a ceasefire in Gaza, it seems as if, to a certain extent, some believe this war is shifting now to the West Bank, guys.
Yasmin, let's talk about what we saw over the weekend. First, we all remember the chaotic scenes from last week's hostage exchanges, those jeering crowds, armed Hamas fighters, creating a dangerous situation. So what happened with this latest exchange over the weekend? It seemed to be more orderly, right?
It certainly was. The three hostages that came home, Afar Calderon, Yarden Bibas, and Keith Siegel, the Israeli-American that you mentioned coming to me a little bit earlier, the first Israeli-American to be released as hostage, to be exchanged over to the Red Cross, brought across the border into Israel, reunited with his family as well. I want to show you behind me what we see throughout the city of Tel Aviv, right? Signs like this one, bring them home now, right? And over the weekend, 3 more, as I just mentioned, were in fact brought home as part of the part 1 of this ceasefire deal. And as you mentioned, much more orderly. The first 2 hostages were exchanged more in the southern part of Gaza in Khan Yunis, and then in the northern part of Gaza, in Gaza City, is where we saw Keith Siegel exchanged. It was quite a moment, to say the least. I was actually at the home of his family members as they watched Keith Siegel be released after 480 plus days in captivity. There was elation, there was happiness, there was worry as well. I want to take a listen to one of the family members that I spoke to, and then we'll talk on the other side. How did you feel?
Relieved, happy, glad that it's over for Keith.
But I say worry and I say guilt as well, because 77 hostages still remain inside Gaza right now. And so for those families that are receiving their family members home, they still think about, of course, the lives that are on the line currently in Gaza.
All right, Yasmin Vasugian, thank you very much.
More international headlines this morning. Greece is on high alert after multiple earthquakes shook the island of Santorini.
Matt Bodmer joins us now with that and more. Hey, Matt, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. Greek emergency services are on alert on the island of Santorini after more than 200 undersea earthquakes were recorded around the region over the weekend. Some of the quakes measured up to a magnitude 4.8, and they continued through Sunday night into Monday morning. This alarmed many residents who said that they felt tremors almost every 10 to 20 minutes. Experts say that this seismic activity is a concern, but it is not linked to Santorini's volcano. Moving along now to Germany, where tens of thousands took to the streets of major German cities over the weekend to protest a controversial migration proposal pushed by the German far right. Protesters say that the leader of Germany's center-right Christian Democrats Party violated an unwritten norm in post-World War II German politics. That would be to never pass any rule or resolution in parliament with support from far-right or nationalist parties. Now, the proposal was, in fact, rejected by the German parliament on Friday, but only by a narrow margin, thanks to votes from the far right in favor. And we'll wrap up this hour in Japan, where it is officially the end of winter, that is according to the Japanese lunar calendar. To celebrate the occasion, hundreds of people gathered yesterday at a Buddhist temple in Tokyo to conduct the annual ritual of mame maki, otherwise known as bean throwing. Participants throw soybeans while others try to catch them. The soybeans themselves are considered a symbol of vitality and purity. The idea here is that the ceremony wards off evil spirits and brings good luck. Back to you guys.
Good luck unless one hits you in the eye. So
Yeah.
then different story. All right, Matt, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Coming up, an eye-opening study about the effects of screen time on young minds.
How much is too much? What researchers are saying next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. It's a question most parents are asking themselves when it comes to screen time for their kids. How much is too much? We've got a closer look at a study that is looking at just that, the effects of screen time on children's brain development.
Yeah, this is from researchers at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. They're using brain scans to understand how screen exposure and other factors influence the development of young minds. NBC News Now anchor Vicki Wynn has more on their findings.
All right, only super special kids get to come back here.
Here at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, Rose Crimer is one of 395 children taking part in the early prediction study, which began in 2019. The 5-year-old is pretending she's the captain of a submarine, an exercise to help her lie still for a 45-minute MRI that will take detailed images of her brain.
7, 8, 9, 10. Good job. Okay.
With the help of some goggles playing the movie Trolls and headphones to blunt the loud machine.
Can you see the screen all right?
Researchers take multiple scans and compare them to the images they took when she was just a few days old.
This is a brain?
This is a brain.
Dr. Nahal Parikh is leading the study looking at the brains of premature babies from birth through childhood to understand how they're affected by different risk factors, including exposure to screens.
What does this image tell you?
It tells us a lot when we correlate it with these exposures such as screen time and we correlate it with development. It tells us whether or not those things are having an impact.
Parents Emily and Harry Kreimer signed up their baby girl Rose for the study.
Do you think there's a difference in TV screen time, like what we had growing up, and what they're exposed to on phones or iPads?
Phones and iPads so much more engaging for children, and especially if they can control it, so it's easier for them to just zone out.
Dr. John Hutton is at the forefront of this fast-developing field, and he's published several studies that already suggest higher levels of screen time can impact a child's growth. One result that keeps showing up: parts of the brain related to reading, language, and decision-making are often weaker in kids who have more screen time. So what are parents and caregivers to do? These experts say try not to introduce any screen time before age 3.
There's so many things we make kids wait to do in our society. We make them wait to drink beer, we make them wait to vote, we make them wait to have a gun. But for some reason, we're not doing the same thing with these very powerful devices that give access to all the contents related to all those things.
You think screen time is the new tobacco?
It's been compared to it, yeah. I mean, and actually, parents using cell phones with their kids has been compared to secondhand smoke.
But experts say we can stop the scrolling and screen time.
No YouTube, no phones, no iPads, even when they say they're educational.
Yes, because we don't really know that they're educational.
And what we do matters more than what we say.
What is your advice for parents who worry it's too late, they've let the cat out of the bag?
You can back it up, and you can back it up in the moment.
Meaning you should model the behavior you want to see.
Do you think parents are aware that they are part of the problem in terms of how addicted they are to their screens?
You can, notice, oh, I've got my cell phone, my child's not responding, they're upset, put it away and reorient and just help that child feel like you are there for them.
Parents are a child's first and most important teacher. That's why it's so important that things that are shared experiences like reading and playing with toys, they can interact back and forth with language and feelings and emotions, and that's when good things happen with kids.
Good things Rose and her family hope researchers will learn to help us shape our views on these devices.
The important thing is to interact with your kids and talk to them, and that's how they learn language, and they don't always get that feedback from the screen.
Vicki Nguyen, NBC News, Cincinnati.
Coming up, from a designer name to a best-selling author, Rebecca Minkoff has proven she is fearless in more ways than one.
Yeah, when we return in our latest edition of Women Mean Business, she'll join me on set to talk about her success and her setbacks. You're watching Morning News Now.
We're back now with some money news. Shares of big automakers worldwide are dipping this morning ahead of President Trump's planned tariffs. CNBC's Savannah Henao has that and some other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning to you. Yes, so auto stocks around the world are falling today in response to President Trump's 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada. Those countries account for more than half of U.S. imports of auto parts, and those parts move back and forth across the border several times in the assembly process. GM, Toyota, Honda, Volkswagen all have factories in Mexico. Almost half of VW's U.S. sales come from cars made south of the border. Nearly half of Americans say they've applied for a loan or financial product in the past 12 months, and 48% have been denied. A new Bankrate survey finds about 14% of applicants have been denied on more than one loan. Now, among those who've been denied, 2/3 say it negatively impacted their personal finances. And stock up your fridge with Modelo. Shares of Constellation Brands are under pressure from President Trump's tariffs on Mexico. The company owns the distribution rights to Corona and Modelo, the top-selling brand in this country. Last month, Barron's argued Constellation's dependence on Mexican beers made it especially vulnerable to U.S. tariffs, Joe.
Just one of many ways the impacts of the tariffs will be felt.
That's
Savannah,
right.
Thank you so much.
You got it.
Well, it's time now for our series, Women Mean Business. Today's guest is a household name and the creator of a global fashion empire, Rebecca Minkoff. This year, she's celebrating 20 years of her iconic brand with a paperback version of her USA Today bestseller, Fearless. That hits shelves tomorrow. Well, Minkoff grew up bi-coastal in California and Florida, where she says she fell in love with fashion as early as she can remember. She started sewing before she hit high school and even made her own bat mitzvah dress. And it comes as no surprise that Minkoff moved to New York City then at just 18. With no money and no degree, she landed an internship with designer Craig Taylor in 1999. 2 years later, she designed a version of the iconic I Heart New York t-shirt that jump-started her career. The t-shirt was so successful, she said her boss told her to leave and go start her own line. So in 2001, she launched Rebecca Minkoff and designed her first handbag, of which I had quite a few years later. Now Minkoff is a CEO, an author, a mom, and a Bravo TV personality. She's a woman who means business, and we're so lucky to have her live on set. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for being here, and congratulations again. Paperback version of this book out tomorrow. We're going to talk about the book, and I love the way it's structured, which we'll get into in just a minute. But first, I just want to ask you, when you think about 20 years, what's your emotion to that? What do you think?
It is wild. It's the longest, shortest time, if that makes any sense. It's like a lifetime when you remember, and I'm running into a lot of people that were there 20 years ago, and we're all retelling the stories.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow, I've been so many people in that time, you know? And there's been so much craziness that's happened in that time. But it feels great that we're still around. The brand is still relevant. Women still love it. Is really an honor.
Absolutely. It's so cool to hear you say, I've been many people. It's a good way to put it, because I think it's a good reminder that we can be and you can reinvent. Tell me about deciding to write a book. I mean, it's a tall order. It's a lot of work. But deciding to put down what you've learned, put pen to paper, and share that.
I just thought that I came to New York City. I had no money. I had nowhere to live initially. And I started out, and 20 years later, right, I've achieved the dream of a designer. And I thought, you know what, if I can help anyone else, you know, at least start whatever it is. And yes, you're going to have fear, and yes, you're going to be scared, but don't let it stop you. You know, kind of dive in knowing that. And so I felt like I had learned enough hard lessons to share that with others.
I love, and what I meant about the way that it's structured is it says, I don't know if you could see this on the camera, but it's structured as rules. This one's rule number 7, be better together. And it goes through kind of, I think, myth busting a little bit, but also you just genuinely sharing these little nuggets that you've learned throughout your time.
Yeah.
It feels very practical. Was that your intention, for it to almost be like, get your hands on this and be kind of a workbook for women?
I want it to be a workbook. I want it to be like, okay, I feel like I'm lost in the confusion. Where do I go? Okay, right. I can not ask permission. I can move ahead. I can ask for what I need, not help. And just these bite-sized, snackable pieces of advice that just in the moment, you're just like, all right, let me go back to that and apply it, so that it's easy. It's not like you're listing out 100 things and you have to do all these exercises, because no one has time for that, frankly.
Absolutely. And I also love in this new version, you dig in on financial literacy, which is so important, I think, for women in business.
It is so important. Let me tell you, I learned the hard way. You know, 8 or 9 years in, my brother telling me, my former co-founder at Rebecca Minkoff, you need to learn the language of business. It is really important for you as a designer. You'll make better business decisions. And he was 100% right. And I think as women, we'll get out our phones to share our kids or to talk about our personal lives. Let's talk about money. Let's talk about education and understanding what we don't know, because it's on us to be in charge of our own financial future.
Ooh, that is really good advice. And let me tell you that you do dig into it in this book if you pick it up. We have to talk about Real Housewives of New York.
Always.
Because people are just, you know, it's a fascinating process. It's a fascinating thing to open your life up in that way. What's that like? Like, how invasive does it feel? How much fun was it? Not fun? What was your experience like?
You know what? There were dramatic moments. If you've watched the season, it was a lot of fun sometimes. It was fun to get dressed up. I made some great friends out of it. And I think what I liked is it's 8 self-made women. No one was married, and that's why they're on the show, because they married a rich man. And I thought, you know, it's incredible. We can have 8 diverse women all in New York showing our lives and just seeing what that a small slice of life is like for us.
It's a good point that in this particular season that's how it was, and it is really neat to see. We love to ask in this segment, Women Mean Business, the advice that you'd give. And I think especially there's 2 things that I think are so inspiring for other women about you. First of all, you said it, being a fashion designer is like the dream, right? Like, I totally remember when I was little, like trying to make little sketches, and it's one of those kind of like pinnacle jobs, and you've made it. And also starting something from scratch is really tough, and you have this namesake global brand now. What advice would you give for young women who are listening and think, how the heck am I going to do that?
You have got to love what you do so much that no matter what happens, that is your North Star. Because you are going to get told no, you're going to have failures, you're going to have things happen that you could not ever imagine that makes it feel like it's all over. Believe me, it has happened over 20 years, more than hundreds of times. And you have to be able to get back up and say, I love what I do. What else would I do? I'm going back to work. And I say it in the book, half the reason why I think we're still here is because my brother and I and the team we had, we just got back up and, all signs said, don't do it, walk away. But we said, no, we're gonna stick this out.
It's pretty neat how you share those challenges in here. You talk about the times when you really felt like maybe it was over. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us women this book. And thank you for coming by. Congrats on paperback.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. Thanks, Rebecca. Coming up, history at the Grammys, from Beyonce's first ever album of the year to big honors for Kendrick Lamar's Drake diss track. Music's biggest night was a night to remember.
When we come back, we're going to have the highlights next on Morning News Now. Saddle up, because Queen Bee is making more than one headline this morning. We're going to get to her historic night at the Grammys in just a moment. First, though, we're going to dig into everything we know so far about Beyonce's Cowboy Carter tour. She broke the news on her Instagram Saturday night, starting with this video you're looking at right here. Of course, it sent the Beehive into a frenzy after months of clues in her posts and her performances. If you take a look at your screen, you can check to see if your city is one of the lucky 9 featured on the rodeo circuit so far. New York, no surprise, is up there. We don't have any details yet about when those tickets go up for sale or if even more cities will make the cowboy cuts. But they have even more to celebrate now.
Yeah. My goodness, that's so exciting. Well, also, the Beehive's buzzing even louder this morning after the superstar finally had the Grammy moment fans have been waiting for. She won Album of the Year for Cowboy Carter at the 67th Annual Grammy Awards last night. Now, most of the winners last night were women, but Kendrick Lamar was one big exception. The rapper took home a total of 5 Grammys, including Record and Song of the Year.
This year, the awards focused on the impact of the recent LA wildfires and how viewers at home could help. By the end of the show, host Trevor Noah said viewers had raised at least $7 million for relief efforts.
Executive Director of Music at Billboard, Jason Lipschutz, joins us now with more from the festivities. Jason, good morning. Great to have you with us. I am tired because I stayed up through these last night, which was silly, but I wanted to see who was going to win. It was Beyonce with her Album of the Year, when some would argue it was long overdue. But before that, she did make history by becoming the first Black woman to win Best Country Album, which was a great moment because she genuinely seemed completely shocked by it. How significant are these wins, not just for her, but for the Recording Academy as a whole?
Yeah, I think definitely significant. I think obviously she was overdue for Album of the Year and had been nominated multiple times in the past and was heavily the favorite for some of those times, including Renaissance and Lemonade and her self-titled album. This was honoring a really daring and provocative project. Obviously it was a country album. It was a little bit of a change up from Beyonce, but it was widely embraced by listeners. It had a #1 hit the #1 of the Billboard 200 chart. And yeah, I think that this was an overdue recognition. And as you said, not only the first Black woman to win Best Country Album, the first Black artist, period, to win Best Country Album, which is a little bit mind-boggling, but history was made at the Grammys last night.
Love seeing Blue Ivy with her, and love that we were spared the awkward moment where someone else won and then had to apologize to Beyonce. So we didn't have that. Beyonce got all the glory last night. All right, another moment getting a ton of buzz. Chappell Roan's acceptance speech when she won Best New Artist. Talk about the message she was giving there, because it really connects with her story building up to this moment.
Yeah, so Chappell Roan is an artist who was on a major label, got dropped by that major label before she really took off. And then even in 2023, when her album Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princess came out, it wasn't an immediate blockbuster. It really took a few months to get going. And her point when she won Best New Artist was, hey, look, we are employees to some degree. Record labels need to support us with from healthcare benefits to different resources to support us doing what we love to do and trying to make a ton of money for the music industry. Obviously, Chappell Roan right now is a superstar and has the clout and platform to deliver that message. I think she wielded that message really effectively and really brilliantly, just taking that moment to let the world know what is going on that a lot of people in the music industry, including myself, have seen for years and years at a time.
Jason, run us through quickly some of the other big winners last night.
So, like you said, Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us, winning Record of the Year and Song of the Year. Kendrick Lamar had been a Grammy darling, has a boatload of Grammys, but had never won a Big Four category, had never won a general category before last night. And, you know, obviously Not Like Us was a huge diss track. I didn't know if it was going to be a little too vitriolic to win something like Song of the Year at the Grammys, but it was just undeniable enough that, you know, Not Like Us wins multiple Big Four categories. Kendrick Lamar goes 5 for 5 last night. And then, you know, what's interesting to me as a pop fan, Sabrina Carpenter, multiple wins last night. Obviously, she missed out in the Big Four, but, you know, winning pop vocal album over some really stiff competition, including Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish, Chappell Roan. People love what Sabrina Carpenter is doing. She had an amazing performance. So she really arrived in a major way, I think, last night.
Yeah, she gives a little comedy, too, last night, which was lovely.
Yeah, it was great. Jason, thanks very much for joining us.
That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Bet the news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for joining us on a Monday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, the tariff tit for tat that has Americans from Main Street to Wall Street worried about their wallets. President Trump not backing down on those steep tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, and Canada. Could you end up shelling out more green for the essentials? We've got team coverage. Salvaging clues from the remains of that tragic midair collision over the Potomac River. This morning, the start of a delicate recovery mission. Crews working to pull what's left of that doomed American Airlines jet from the frigid waters, hoping for more answers. Comes just hours after the families of the victims came together in the wake of America's deadliest air disaster in more than 20 years. Plus, what we're now learning about another aviation catastrophe that rocked Philadelphia over the weekend. Also this morning, it's a brand new drug that could revolutionize the way doctors treat pain without doling out those potentially dangerous opioids. So how exactly does it work, and when might be the best time to take it? Our doctor is in. And who run the world? Music's leading ladies cleaning up at last night's Grammys. And of course, it was capped off by that historic win for Queen Bee. We're going to take you through all the big highlights and show-stopping performances later on in the hour. It's always like the best concert of the year, too, which is what makes it so cool. We get to see our favorite songs performed in really, really cool ways.
It's just stunning performances. It was awesome.
All right, let's begin this hour with that looming trade war between the U.S. and its closest economic allies.
Over the weekend, President Trump followed through on his promise to impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico, as well as China, with the measures set to come into effect at midnight tonight. All three countries are now vowing to retaliate, with the impending trade war spooking global financial markets. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Hake has the latest.
These tariffs were a key campaign promise of then candidate Trump, and they're set to go into effect at midnight tonight. The president is already facing blowback internationally and here at home, not just over the tariffs, but over other dramatic moves he's made to remake the federal government in his image. Overnight, President Trump defending those sweeping new tariffs.
We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that. But long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world.
Mr. Trump imposing 25% tariffs on most imports from Canada and Mexico that could impact everything from oil and lumber to produce and auto parts. He also ordered a 10% tariff on all Chinese goods. Even key Republicans sounding the alarm about the impact to Americans' wallets.
It will drive the cost of everything up. In other words, it'll be paid for by American consumers. Why would you want to get in a fight with your allies over this?
Canada's prime minister warning Americans will feel the pain.
Tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk.
While Canadian crowds at sporting events this weekend booed during the U.S. national anthem. It comes as a government purge continues to escalate, including 6 senior leaders at the FBI fired Friday. And the top 2 security officials at the U.S. Agency for International Development were also placed on administrative leave, 5 sources say, after they tried to prevent employees from the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency from accessing sensitive computer systems. Musk saying overnight that he's in the process of shutting down the agency, which coordinates the U.S.'s overseas humanitarian assistance, adding the president approves.
I went over it with him, in detail, and he agreed.
All as his agency may be gaining even more power. The New York Times reporting, according to 5 sources, that some of Musk's team has gained access to the federal payment system. That system sends out money after it's approved by Congress and contains sensitive information from millions of Americans who get federal payments like Social Security checks.
Just before 2 o'clock this morning, Musk posting on X that his team, quote, spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper. As of this morning, the agency's website is down and its future very much uncertain.
All right, Garrett, thank you.
For more on how these tariffs will impact our daily lives, we're joined by NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans. Christine, good to have you with us right now. So once the tariffs go into effect, let's talk about which items get impacted first.
Well, look, these are 2 of America's biggest allies that the president is putting tariffs on, and then another strategic competitor. When you look at Mexico, China, and Canada, by far the biggest trading partners of the U.S. So there is so much stuff that is traded here. I want to zero in on energy because I think this might be where you feel this first. Overnight, we've already got oil prices up $2 or $3 because here's why. The United States imports 4.2 million barrels of Canadian crude oil a day. There are refineries in the Midwest that are exactly designed to handle that type of crude oil, American workers who refine it into gasoline that goes into the cars of American drivers. So experts say 15 to 25 cents extra a gallon for gasoline is what we could see. We also have a very, very intricate, easy for me to say, North American auto industry. Parts cross the border multiple times. President Donald Trump wrote the rules to allow that to happen without tariffs. Now he wants to rewrite those rules with tariffs. That could add, experts say, $3,000 to the average price of a new car.
What about groceries? The big thing, everybody's wondering what that's going to feel like, especially since it was a big campaign promise to bring those down.
40% of America's fresh fruit and vegetables come from other countries. That can't be replaced with U.S. production overnight. So from Mexico, look at this list of items. You already have such thin margins for food. Experts tell me they think maybe most, if not all, of a 25% tariff will go right onto the price of these things when you pay for them at the grocery store. Here's what we have from Canada. Do you think Canada is the producer of 81% of the French fries the U.S. imports, frozen French fries? I mean, it sounds like a small thing, but it kind of shows how different countries do things better. You know, they do this very well. They have like the land and the resources to do it. They do French fries. The U.S. is not going to overnight start to supply all of its own French fries, right? So in the near term, there will be disruptions. It means higher prices and it means lower economic growth. The only question is how much higher will prices go and how much lower will economic growth in the U.S. go?
And you mentioned near term, but what if this is still going on 2 months from now, 3 months from now? What are some of the long range implications for the economy if this just keeps going?
So it depends on how long this lasts. It depends on if this is some sort of negotiating tool. If this lasts a period of months, you're talking 1% to 2% off GDP. That means the economy will be smaller and smaller. It means the longer this goes on, prices could go up. If there's retaliation, it means taxpayers may have to come to the aid of, say, American farmers. That happened in the first round of trade wars from Donald Trump's first time in office. Taxpayers had to step in and pay billions of dollars to farmers because they got hit so badly there overall. And then there's the question of exemptions. You know, this is from the Consumer Tech Association, right? So this is somebody who's representing these big tech companies that make a lot of their goods in China, for example. They say smartphones would cost another $200, laptops, $350, a video game console, another $250, if tariffs are allowed to go in without exemptions. In the first round of the tariff trade war in 2018, Donald Trump gave exemptions to some Apple products, so your iPhone didn't cost more money. Is he going to do that? Is he going to be wheeling and dealing and letting some industries skate? Maybe vegetables, maybe fruits, maybe some kind of cars, maybe laptops. We just don't know. Right now, these are blanket tariffs that go into effect this week.
Christine, as Joe just referenced, like if it were to end, if we don't see this for months and months, how does this end? What is it that Trump wants to see, maybe in his view, rectified by these countries?
So there's 3 things that he's been talking about. The first time he did this in 2018, he said he wanted more jobs in the U.S. And actually what happened is we lost jobs and prices went up. In washing machines, domestic washing machines, I think there were new jobs added in washing machines. but at a cost to consumers of something like $400,000 per job, according to think tanks. Then he's now started talking about fentanyl and illegal immigration. The Canadians are scratching their head. They're not a big source of fentanyl through their trade, and illegal immigration is not that big of a deal from China compared with Mexico. And the other interesting thing is that Donald Trump designed the USMCA when he gutted NAFTA. So he's the one who wrote the rules for North American trading. And now he is essentially throwing that out, which raises the question, can these countries trust the United States with whatever kind of deal they're going to make if that deal doesn't last? You know, so there's just a lot of. It's why America's allies are just so confounded this morning, and why consumers are so concerned.
All right, Christine, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Well, the Democratic Party has a new leader this morning. It's 51-year-old Ken Martin. He was comfortably elected as the national chair of the DNC over the weekend. In his victory speech, the Minnesota native said Democrats must fight for working people and against President Donald Trump.
Trump's first weeks have shown us that what happens when amateur hour meets demolition derby, right? And at the same time, he's invited all these billionaires into the Oval Office to mine, extract, and profit off of our government. It's the people's government. It's not another resource for ultra elites to exploit.
Martin previously worked as the leader of the Minnesota State Democratic Party and stressed the need for party unity.
Today, salvage teams are set to begin hoisting the wreckage of the passenger jet from last week's deadly air crash out of the Potomac River.
It comes a day after grieving family members gathered near the crash site to honor loved ones killed when the jet collided with an Army helicopter. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello is at Reagan National Airport in Arlington, Virginia with the latest. Tom, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. This is going to be another very difficult day here. The D.C. fire chief says they have so far recovered 55 of the 67 victims. And so they have put the divers in the water over the last few days wearing helmets and really bright lights, trying to map out the debris field. And they are hoping that they can find the remaining 12 victims when they lift the wreckage up out of the water, hopefully today.
On the Potomac River this morning, special salvage cranes are in position to begin lifting the wreckage of American Flight 5342 from the icy water. Recovery teams hope they will quickly find the victims who have not yet been found.
Should any remains be found during our process, an automatic work stoppage happens.
In a somber memorial under police escort, the families of the victims gathered Sunday at the edge of the water and the runway.
They are a strong group of families that are focused on getting their loved ones back.
NTSB investigators are hoping the helicopter's black box will reveal its altitude before the crash. Air traffic control radar indicated it was at 200 feet, the maximum allowed. But the plane's black box showed the crash happened at roughly 325 feet, and the jet slightly pulled up 1 second before impact. How critical is it for you to glean that data off of the black box from the Black Hawk helicopter?
Yeah, I think that is a critical piece of our investigation.
Investigators have interviewed the controllers who were on duty. The transportation secretary confirms the tower was understaffed, as it often is. For years, the airport and local politicians have warned Reagan Airport's airspace is too congested. Planes and helicopters flying just a few hundred feet from each other. This past week's string of aviation incidents top of mind for flyers, and an American pilot trying to reassure his passengers.
I had no higher calling than carefully and professionally transporting you today.
I assure you that the safest mode of transportation is air travel. It is incredibly safe.
Yeah, once salvage teams are able to lift the wreckage up out of the water, if they identify any victims at that moment, they will immediately halt operations, and they say go into a very dignified process, removing those victims, taking them to a tent on shore to begin the medical exam portion of all of this. Ultimately, they want to remove the wreckage, bring it to a hangar nearby for the NTSB investigators to go over with a fine-tooth comb. They hope that they could then work on recovering the helicopter perhaps later in the week. You guys, back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you so much.
For more, let's bring in Samuel Aksher. He is the president and interim CEO of U.S. Figure Skating. He joins us now from our L.A. bureau. Thank you very much for joining us, and we just want to offer our condolences. We know 28 of the victims of this crash were members of the figure skating community. They were on their way back from a skating development camp in Wichita. I mean, just seeing these pictures on our screen, I know this is a massive impact to your community. What is today going to be like for you, for the friends, for the family members, as this wreckage is pulled from the river?
Well, it must be absolutely excruciating for the families to go through this, and our thoughts and prayers are with them, not just for the 28 we lost, but of course for the entire families impacted by this terrible crash. It has been devastating to the entire skating community. We're all in shock still, but we were thinking about how to help these skaters and the families recover and how to help our skaters deal with this just terrible, terrible tragedy.
You know, the figure skating community is such a tightly knit community. Talk about what that has meant as you supported each other and just how the community is honoring all of these victims.
Well, that's true. We are a very tight-knit family. It's even global in nature. We've had condolences from the International Skating Union and many of the countries, federations, everywhere from Japan and China to Canada and Mexico have reached out. The U.S. Olympic Committee has been key partners in helping us with this recovery. We've had moments of silence at all the major competitions, at Europeans, last week in Tallinn, and the U.S. Speed Skating Championships in Milwaukee, and today at 3:35 p.m. Eastern at many of the rinks throughout the country, there'll be a moment of silence that we will ask each of those rinks to record and to consolidate so that we can preserve the memories of those skaters.
I understand your organization is offering support to the family members, and not just emotionally, financially as well. How are you doing that? And also for members of the public who are listening right now, how can we help?
Yes, thanks. We have been offering grief counseling, which started almost the first second we heard that there was a regional jet that crashed and it originated in Wichita. We knew it was going to be bad. But we have started a fund, a relief fund for the families. You can find it at usfigureskatingsupport.org or through links on our website, usfsa.org, and contribute to help the families recover. It's going to take a lot of resources to help them. But we've offered contact information for all our skating family where they can get support. We offered specific grief counseling sessions for the skaters and coaches and parents that were at the camp that got to know these skaters and families. And our team psychiatrist, Dr. Caroline Silby, has been with the families at that hotel next to the Reagan Airport throughout this disaster.
Sam Aksher, thank you very much for joining us during such a difficult time for your community. We appreciate it.
All right, this morning we're learning more about the victims of another deadly plane crash. 7 people were killed when a medical jet crashed just after takeoff in Philadelphia on Friday evening. Officials have recovered the flight data recorder and are now hoping it will give them clues as to what caused the crash. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda joins us now from Philly with the latest. Emily, good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you. Investigators are one step closer to understanding what went wrong aboard the medevac plane, recovering, as you mentioned, the black box. Just beyond those police cars you'll see behind me, underground about 8 feet deep. There are hundreds of people involved in this multi-agency response to the deadly crash that killed 7 people and injured at least 22 others. This morning, federal investigators combing through charred debris after a medical transport plane nosedived and exploded near a mall and neighborhoods in northeast Philadelphia. The crash sending people scrambling for cover. In the debris field scattered over several city blocks, the NTSB recovering both of the engines, the jet's enhanced ground proximity warning system, and the cockpit voice recorder, which was uncovered in a crater 8 feet deep. Taking off from Northeast Philadelphia Airport Friday, the Learjet was in the air for less than a minute before it crashed, killing one person on the ground and all 6 Mexican citizens on board, including Liseth Murillo Osuna and her daughter Valentina Guzman Murillo, who was 11 years old, according to Jet Rescue Air Ambulance. They were heading home to Mexico after 4 months of treatment at Shriners Children's Hospital. The fiery explosion also injured 22 others, according to officials. Andre Howard says his 10-year-old son was struck in the head with metal while trying to protect his younger sister.
We're supposed to be home relaxing, and we're here fighting for his life.
Beyond the yellow tape along Cotman Avenue, as many as 11 homes significantly damaged in the crash. Now, in this shaking community, the long road to recovery underway.
We will get through this moment.
As for the cause of the crash, the NTSB chair says investigators are considering everything. They're looking into the potential if weather played a role, a mechanical failure, a medical situation. Now, it's not clear what kind of condition the cockpit voice recorder was recovered in, but we know it is built to be durable, and the NTSB expects it to play a key role in their investigation. Guys.
All right, Emily, thank you.
Let's check in now with meteorologist Denise Isaac.
Yeah, she's got a look at what you need to know for the week ahead. Denise, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. The week ahead, well, we have a roller coaster ride of conditions expected across the entire nation. So let's start with talking about snow across the upper Midwest, from North Dakota all the way into northern Michigan. And then this cold front will slide towards the Northeast tonight, bringing more snow from Buffalo all the way to Burlington, Vermont. As far as how much snow we're talking about, well, additional snowfall amounts anywhere between 1 to 5 inches possible, especially across the higher terrain in northern New England. While it's cold and snowy in the northern tier, completely different story in the south, where we're flirting with record high temperatures. Galveston today, 74 degrees, record is 75. Nashville, 72, while Dodge City, 75 degrees, previous record is 77. So many across the deep south really dealing with some record warm temps. As far as the west, now we're tracking some rain. Atmospheric river coming in towards California today, bringing heavy rain across northern California. Flooding is possible around Chico, Redding, and also Santa Rosa. Tomorrow, the rain falls across central California with snow across northern California. The Bay Area will be at risk for flooding. And not only that, but also the possibility for mudslides, especially across the fires we had over places like the Palisades, the Easton Fire, because all this ground can't really absorb the rain. There we could expect up to an inch of rain. So rainfall amounts from now through Wednesday could range anywhere between an inch to 5 inches, locally 7 inches towards the mountains. We are tracking 18 to 24 inches of snow, with some locally possible to 36 inches. By Wednesday, record highs continue across the south, bitterly cold towards the upper Midwest. Back to you.
All right, Denise, thank you very much. There's more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. Later on, the new FDA-approved drug that could change the pain game without those dangerous opioids.
First, after the break, the first stop for Secretary of State Marco Rubio is Panama. His message to that nation as President Trump threatens to take over its critical canal. That's next. Welcome back. President Trump has made it clear he believes the U.S. should reclaim the Panama Canal. Panama is where his new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is making his first foreign trip since being sworn in. As our chief foreign affairs correspondent, Andrea Mitchell, reports, Rubio is sending an unmistakable message.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Panama, his first stop as America's top diplomat.
Of all the agencies out there was none I would rather be in charge of and lead.
Flying into a storm of controversy over President Trump's threat to take over the Panama Canal, claiming China controls it, a threat Rubio relayed to Panama's government. Panama's President Molino rejected the Trump claim, saying the canal is Panamanian and will remain so. For Panama, the 51-mile passageway between the Atlantic and Pacific is a source of enormous pride and an economic lifeline. Billions of dollars paid by global shippers to cut the distance by more than 9,000 miles. Rubio said the U.S. has to take steps to protect its rights to the canal unless changes are made to prevent the risk of China shutting it down, because Chinese companies operate ports at both ends. This pagoda proclaiming China's presence here in Panama, along with this bridge being built over the canal by Chinese-led companies, is partly why President Trump is sounding the alarm. But the canal itself is run by Panama, with ports along the way operated by companies from all over the world, including the U.S., even Taiwan. Canal officials also reject President Trump's claim that U.S. ships are charged more. Are you overcharging U.S. ships?
All the Panama Canal clients or users, they're paying the same.
Many Panamanians see the U.S. threat as bullying.
I think that a lot of Panamanians can agree, all of us, that it belongs to us.
Rubio touring the canal for himself. Panama and the U.S. do agree on cracking down on illegal migration. So before he leaves, Secretary Rubio will witness the deportation of dozens of Colombians back to their country.
Our thanks to Andrea Mitchell for that report.
Let's get to other international headlines now. Parts of Australia are bracing for a third day of record-breaking floods.
NBC's Matt Bodner has that and some other world news. Matt, good morning.
Joe, Savannah, good morning. Floodwaters continue to rise in Australia's northeast for the third day now, sparked by record rainfall in the region. One person is reported to have drowned on Sunday, and thousands in low-lying areas have been ordered to evacuate. In just a few days, nearly an entire summer's worth of rain has fallen on large swaths of North Queensland. The entire impacted area measures about 450 miles. Severe weather is expected to continue through today. Moving along now to the nation of Georgia, where two opposition leaders were arrested at ongoing anti-government protests in the capital of Tbilisi. Mass protests have taken place daily in Georgia since September, when the pro-Russian Georgian Dream Party claimed victory in parliamentary elections. The opposition movement has claimed that these results were falsified. Georgian Dream has chosen to postpone EU membership talks. This is a move seen by the Georgian opposition as a step back toward subordinates to Moscow. Georgia, of course, was a member of the Soviet Union. And we'll wrap up this hour in Germany, where German hunters spent the weekend competing before a jury for the honor of best deer call. This is a tradition that's hundreds of years old, and it took place in the city of Dortmund. That's in western Germany. Now, I am from Michigan, but I can't make this sound, so let's take a listen. So there you have it, German hunters in traditional dress blowing into a variety of instruments designed to mimic the bellow of a red deer. The judges actually listen with their eyes closed so as not to be distracted from the nuances of the deer call. With that, Savannah, Joe, I'll close my eyes if you want to take a shot at it.
Not going to happen, but
we don't have that thing.
The thing. You need one of the things, the many things that they were holding.
That was something. I'm so glad you let us hear it. Matt, thank you very much.
Michigan's so proud of you, Matt. Coming up, lawyers representing actors Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni facing off in court for the first time today.
So what can we expect when they meet before a judge? We've got the latest on the case that has gripped Hollywood up next. Welcome back. The epic legal battle between It Ends With Us co-stars Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni heads to the courtroom. The first pre-trial hearing in the case is set to begin today in New York. It comes after Baldoni's team amended his lawsuit and launched a brand new website over the weekend with what they claim is even more evidence against Lively. NBC News correspondent Chloe Malas has more on what to expect from today's hearing.
Hey there. While the two actors aren't expected to appear themselves in court, there is a lot on the agenda for the first day. Blake Lively's attorneys are aiming to stop Justin Baldoni's team from continuing to make statements to the media and tainting potential jurors in a case where so many private conversations have already been put on public display.
Today, co-stars turned legal rivals Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni's lawyers facing off in court for the first time at a pretrial hearing where Lively's attorneys will ask a judge for a gag order in the explosive case. The attempt to staunch the flow of behind-the-scenes details being released comes as Justin Baldoni's team launched a new website over the weekend, featuring an amended legal complaint and a 168-page timeline of events, including newly released text messages allegedly sent between the embattled stars of It Ends With Us, as well as Lively's husband, actor Ryan Reynolds. One alleged text from Reynolds to Baldoni expresses his excitement about It Ends With Us, writing, "This is going to be incredible. I happen to adore you, Justin." But as tensions developed, the amended complaint accuses Reynolds of mocking and bullying Baldoni through a character in Reynolds' film Deadpool and Wolverine.
It is 2 a.m.
In this audio message obtained by thedailymail.com, Baldoni tells Lively he's sorry for creative differences that arose on set.
I for sure fell short.
Neither party's lawyers commenting on the recording. Lively sued Baldoni in December for sexual harassment on the set of It Ends With Us and for directing what she says was a coordinated smear campaign against her on social media. Baldoni in turn filing suit to the tune of $400 million against Lively, Reynolds, and the New York Times for defamation. His attorney telling NBC News last month that they plan to release all communications between the feuding co-stars.
We want the documents to be out there. We want people to make their determination based on receipts.
Now, a source close to Blake Lively is telling NBC News that Justin Baldoni has prided himself on making Blake look bad in the media, and that what may seem like a typical celebrity feud is very, very real for Lively. Meanwhile, a lawyer for Justin Baldoni says that they are hopeful that fresh evidence will corroborate what they call a blind pursuit of power by Lively. Back to you.
All right, Chloe, thank you so much.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos is here to help break all of this down. All right, first up today is really this gag order issue. What are the odds we see one of those in this case?
Low. Just off the bat, gag orders are always constitutionally suspect because they, by nature, inhibit your free speech rights. However, when you ask about a gag order, the first question is who's being gagged? And there's a difference between litigants like Baldoni and Lively and the attorneys. As attorneys, what we do is we agree to some degree to be beholden to the court, to follow its rules. So it's easier to gag attorneys than it is to gag litigants. But even then, if we're talking about releasing documents that are either already filed in court or they're just documents that speak for themselves, that's not really getting up at a podium and calling everyone a liar and making statements about the case. These are documents, and presumably they're going to be filed. They're going to be exhibits. So while there's a chance they could be gagged, I really don't see that happening in this case as to documents. But the attorneys, if anyone is gagged, maybe the attorneys.
So it sounds like then maybe you don't think any legal lines were crossed with him putting up this website, releasing all these text messages, releasing audio. Is that right?
This kind of thing doesn't happen that often, but these are litigants with a lot of money and the ability to put up a website that throws all the documents up there. But I got to tell you, I've seen a lot of pro se litigants. And some people, not me, call them a little out there, a little weird. They do this kind of stuff. They set up websites and say, this is the injustice of the township, and these are all the documents. Now, usually it doesn't lead to anything, but this isn't the first time that litigants have created a website and shoved out all of their documents into the internetosphere. So it's happened before. I don't see this as a likely subject for a gag order, simply because gag orders are generally suspect from the outset.
We know Lively and Reynolds are trying to get Baldoni's suit dismissed. What are the odds any of these get dismissed either before trial or before they settle?
Very low. I file these motions all the time. They're called Rule 12 motions. You're trying to throw out a case because either from the four corners, it doesn't state a claim. In other words, even if you assume everything's true in there, they don't make out a legal claim, or there may not be jurisdiction, or they may not have received service of process. These just statistically almost always lose. They preserve an issue maybe for the record. They make it a big hassle for the other side because they have to respond to it. So there is some value there. But on the whole, these are strategic moves. Motions to dismiss before discovery has even begun, very rarely granted. Judges do not like to throw out a case and deny a litigant their day in court.
All right, Danny, thank you so much.
Thank you. Coming up, we're taking a look at a brand new drug that could revolutionize the way doctors treat pain.
And it works without using risky opioids. So what makes it so different, and who could it benefit the most? Doctors In next.
We're back with a newly approved drug that has the potential to revolutionize the way millions of us deal with pain. On Thursday, the Food and Drug Administration approved Jornavix, a new type of non-opioid painkiller It's used to treat moderate to severe short-term pain in adults.
The drug from Vertex Pharmaceuticals is billed as non-addictive and is the first of its kind to gain approval in more than 20 years. Now, experts say the drug could reduce the number of opioids patients are prescribed right after surgery.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar joins us now with more on this. Doctor, good morning. What can you tell us about this new drug and what makes it different from other opioids, something like Vicodin?
Yeah, it's definitely exciting news. So I think first it's just a quick understanding of how pain actually happens. The perception of pain happens when your brain tells you that something hurts. So you have a site of tissue injury, or let's say you have a surgical incision. There's a signal that's transmitted through a nerve that goes to the spinal cord, that goes up to your brain, and your brain says that area hurts. The way opioids work is that they block that pain signal at the level of the brain, but they also cause a release of dopamine, which is the reason that you experience that euphoria and is the concern with regards to addiction potential. This medicine works at the site of tissue injury. It blocks that nerve signal from ever leaving that area. So really experts say, and I agree with them, that there really is no addiction potential. And again, this is for acute, moderate to severe pain, such as in a post-op setting, medical procedures, tissue injury, and can really limit the exposure to opioids for a lot of individuals who are undergoing procedures or have acute pain.
So then could there be a time when it helps people who have chronic pain, arthritis, back pain, anything like that? Is that something we're looking at as potential down the road?
So they are looking at it. Right now, the data is a little bit mixed. So they did evaluate the medicine in individuals who have nerve damage from diabetes, something called diabetic neuropathy, and it did seem to help there, but it didn't help people with sciatica. So we're not quite there yet, but what's really exciting about this is that it really is a novel target, a novel mechanism of action, and the people who are doing this kind of research and working on medications like this, they can expand on this so that one day maybe it could see a use in chronic pain as well.
Doctor, as we mentioned earlier, it's the first non-opioid pain medication to receive this federal approval in more than 20 years. Why has it taken so long? Is this difficult to do? Is there concern that they're taking a look at under the microscope? Why?
So this is how I always sum it up to my patients. If you think about the end of the 20th century, it was all about opioids. And really research on non-opioid pain medications kind of fell on the back burner. And so scientists really had to play a lot of catch up in the last couple of years to really come up with something that is as effective but safe as opposed to opioids. And I think that really is reflected in the timeline here. That, and also there have been other candidates that have gotten to phase 2, phase 3, and then just ultimately fail. So, the holy grail for us who manage patients with chronic pain is to find a safe and effective medicine without abuse potential. I think this is the tip of the iceberg. I think it's encouraging. I'm not surprised that it's taken this long. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but we need to look forward.
All right, Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Some financial news now, starting with the latest tool from OpenAI that promises to save us hours of research on any topic.
CNBC's Silvana now joins us with that and other money news. Hey, Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Good morning to you. Yeah, so OpenAI is releasing a new AI tool that's designed to carry out time-consuming online research for everything from science questions to car recommendations. Now, the service called Deep Research will be available to certain paying customers through ChatGPT. In response to a prompt, the tool will scour words and images online as well as files you've uploaded to create an in-depth report. Now, OpenAI is cautioning Deep Research is still in the early stages and can show up some made-up information as factual. Governments are starting to take steps against Chinese AI startup DeepSeek, which shocked Silicon Valley and the big tech trade last week when it unveiled a chatbot that was designed for much less than rivals such as ChatGPT. Now, Taiwan is banning agencies from using DeepSeek, calling it a security risk. Taiwan has long been wary of Chinese technology, given Beijing's claims of sovereignty over the island and military threats against Taipei. Authorities in South Korea, France, Italy, and other countries have also been looking into how DeepSeek collects and uses personal data. And Gerber is recalling edible teething sticks because of possible choking hazards. The company is pulling its Soothe and Chew brand after receiving complaints from consumers, including one report of a child being taken to the emergency room. The teething sticks are marketed to parents of children 6 months or older. Gerber says customers should return them to stores where they bought for a refund, guys.
All right, Silvana, thank you so much.
Some activists are calling for a nationwide boycott of Target because the retailer announced it was rolling back DEI initiatives in the wake of the presidential inauguration. But some black business owners who sell items at the retailer are arguing a boycott could do more harm than good. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung takes a closer look.
Hi, Donald John. Following the inauguration of President Trump, Target said it would end its initiatives on DEI. Social media lighting up.
These companies only respond to financial consequences, so we have to hit them where it hurts.
With calls to boycott the mega retailer.
They won't do nothing. They won't change nothing. They won't pass no laws unless we affect their money. So let's do just that.
Just heard Target restocked on Young King.
The founders of some black-owned businesses whose products are sold at Target also expressing disappointment at the company.
It kind of hurts a little bit more because Target was the one that was really felt like they went above and beyond.
Stefan Miller was able to get his Young King hair care products on Target shelves through a program linked to a supplier diversity initiative that Target now says it will change. But Miller says a boycott in response to those changes could hurt him and other black founders more than it hurts Target.
If we're not there and if we don't perform, we kind of lose a seat at the table.
A view echoed by some on social media.
You take all our sales and they dwindle down, and then those companies get to say, oh, your products are not performing.
Instead, some are asking shoppers to double down on buying black products, even if at Target. Because as one founder said on Instagram, e-commerce can be more expensive. Often brands must partner with Target or Walmart. Target hasn't suggested it will remove these products from its shelves, and it's still not clear how the new strategy will affect black-owned businesses. In a press release, Target said it was ending its 3-year DEI initiatives, stopping its participation with external diversity watchdogs like the Human Rights Council, and renaming its supplier diversity team to Supplier Engagement. But others in the community nonetheless say it's bad business for Target.
They are willingly making their company less efficient, less strategic, and less able to serve the consumers that they say they are committed to.
When asked for comment, Target also sent us an internal memo from an executive to employees focused on, quote, our commitment to growth and opportunity for all, without providing more details. Target joining other major corporations like Walmart, Amazon, and McDonald's in rolling back some DEI initiatives following Trump's election. It's not the first time the Bullseye brand has been the target of controversy. Back in 2023, anti-LGBTQ groups sparked a major boycott of Target over Pride Month merchandise, with the false claim that the company was marketing transgender-friendly clothing to children. Following that boycott, Target's in-store sales dropped, and it pulled some merchandise. But not everyone is moving so quickly to end DEI within their organizations. Civil rights activist and MSNBC anchor Al Sharpton leading a, quote, buy-in at Costco last week in support of the company keeping its DEI initiatives in place. Companies like Apple, Microsoft, and JP Morgan also resisting efforts to quash their DEI initiatives. The black businesses caught in the middle, hoping to focus on solutions.
Don't let a moment define the movement. I think we've just got to get through the noise and be able to have that conversation with those across the table.
And one more challenge for corporate America is pressure coming from politicians. In the case of Costco, which you heard just there, their DEI policies were upheld by shareholders that voted overwhelmingly to keep their DEI policies. But now they're facing 19 attorneys general, including from the state of Texas, asking them to abandon their DEI policy. This, as we're hearing from Washington, President Trump going after DEI policies in the federal government. You wonder if that pressure is coming to corporate America overwhelmingly as well. Back to you.
Ryan, thank you.
Let's get to what's being described as one of the most shocking sports trades in memory. In a move that could define the future of the NBA, 2 superstars are switching teams in the middle of the season, leaving both fans and players wondering how this happened. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin has the details.
Bro, what? One of the most stunning trades in NBA history, sending fans over the edge.
Wow. Luka just got traded for Anthony Davis.
The Dallas Mavericks trading Luka Doncic for LA Lakers star Anthony Davis.
You had to have gotten hacked, right, bro?
A trade agreement so stunning, fans questioned if the reporter who broke the story had his social media hacked. Jalen Brunson asked, April Fool's, right? And wait, what? From Patrick Mahomes. In Dallas, protest outside the arena. Mavs general manager Nico Harrison addressing frustrated fans.
I'm sorry they're frustrated, but it's something that we believe in as an organization that's going to make us better.
It's the first time two reigning All-NBA players have swapped teams mid-season. Davis was not in New York as the Lakers defeated the Knicks. LeBron James seemingly unaware of trade talks during the post-game interview.
We damn sure can't do it. Take up all what AD does. He covers for all of us.
The blockbuster trade involves three other players, an unnamed future draft pick, and a third team, the Utah Jazz. The team's now welcoming their new players on social media.
This is major. This is going to alter the Western Conference for years to come.
The Dallas Mavericks, they've made it very pointed and clear that they weren't always happy with Luka Doncic's defense and his physical conditioning. Very rarely does a team get rid of a guy who can win multiple MVPs over the course of his career.
Mavs GM Nico Harrison also explaining his game plan, noting the importance of a strong defense, and this trade betters their chances of winning a championship. Back to you.
All right, Dana, thank you.
Coming up, music's biggest night certainly did not disappoint.
After the break, everything you may have missed from last night's Grammy Awards, including a historic win for Queen Bee herself. That's next. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's probably a safe bet, right, that if Caitlin Clark and A'ja Wilson were at a roulette table, they'd both put some money on 22. That's because those WNBA superstars put that number on the map back in college when it was on each of their respective jerseys as all-stars and champions for women's sports. So it's only fitting that the two 22s had their collegiate jerseys retired on February 2nd, 2-2. Clark's ceremony happened in front of a sold-out crowd. The NCAA's all-time leading scorer's jersey took a permanent spot in the rafters right after her Iowa Hawkeyes women's team beat USC in a stunning upset. Meanwhile, down in South Carolina, A'ja Wilson had a tearful moment in the spotlight. The three-time WNBA MVP's jersey now sits right next to the NCAA championship banner Wilson helped the Gamecocks win just 8 years ago. Congratulations to both of those players. No surprise.
Yeah,
big crowds.
I'm trying to imagine if like a young player joined the Hawkeyes and like they gave her number 22.
Yeah, you're like,
no,
yeah.
not mine. I don't want this one. All right, let's wrap up the hour with a look back at music's biggest night, the 67th annual Grammy Awards.
The industry's biggest stars lit up Los Angeles last night with Beyonce making history once again. NBC News correspondent Kaylee Hartung was on the red carpet and has a recap of all the highlights.
Hey, good morning, guys. For all the stars we saw walking the red carpet, the loudest cheer of the night came when first responders entered. This is the first major award show since those deadly wildfires here in LA. The Grammys refocusing its program and dedicating much of the night to honoring those affected and the heroes.
Cowboy Carter.
It was a big night for Beyonce at the Grammys. Her album, Cowboy Carter, wrangling the night's top prize, Album of the Year.
And I hope we just keep pushing forward, opening doors.
Queen Bee also making history.
Cowboy Carter.
Becoming the first Black artist to win Best Country Album. The award presented to her by fellow superstar Taylor Swift. In the top song categories, Kendrick Lamar's scathing track, Not Like Us, winning 5, including Record and Song of the Year.
Nothing more powerful than rap music.
The night filled with electrifying performances. From Chappell Roan, who won Best New Artist, to Sabrina Carpenter and Cynthia Erivo. There was also a moving medley dedicated to late legendary producer Quincy Jones, with Stevie Wonder leading the crowd in We Are the World.
We are the world.
Female rapper Doechii becoming just the third woman to win Best Rap Album.
I want to tell you, you can do it. Anything is possible.
There were also touching tributes to LA in the wake of the deadly wildfires. Including first responders who received a standing ovation.
And how about this? Lady Gaga surprised everyone by dropping a brand new music video from her new album during a commercial break of the show. And Beyonce announcing that the Cowboy Carter Tour is headed to 9 cities, adding to her already tremendous night. Back to you.
All right, Kaylee, thank you so much. And now the question's about the third installment of the album. We had
So
Renaissance, we had Cowboy Carter. What is she going to give us next?
Also, I was like, what is happening when that Lady Gaga thing was like going on in commercial break? It was like a commercial, but it was a full music video. It's like, whoa, have we heard this before? Is this new? Yeah, no kidding. She's so creative, it's wild.
A lot of publicity into that new album due out in March. All right, that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Don't go anywhere, though. The news continues.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.